Hi, this is April. Welcome to Crochet After Dark, podcast episode number 12. So it's been a couple weeks since my last podcast. Between vacation and kids starting school, things have just been hectic around here. So I do have two finished objects and a few whips I want to show you. Let's get started. The first finished object I have is this beautiful wave blanket. I used a variety of colors. And then at the top and bottom, I kind of tried to square it off a little bit here and then put this really nice sparkle kind of edge border. So this blanket I worked on for a long time. If you are a returning viewer to the podcast, you know that this one took forever to weave in all of the ends. So for each row, I had two ends to weave in, one on each side. And I could have done like an envelope border for it, but I really didn't want to do that. I really wanted to have this nice kind of thinner edge for it. So I did have to weave in all those ends, but I powered through it. I just kind of broke the project up into sections and then gradually, slowly but surely worked on it. And once all the ends were weaved in, the blanket itself, actually the border came out pretty good. So you know, one of the things I really liked about this project was that all of these color changes really kept me kind of motivated to work on it. I don't know about you, but when I'm working on a project, getting to the next color change is always kind of the most exciting thing. So I typically don't use self-striping yarns or cakes because I don't control when the color changes happen. Now, of course, I'm going to show you a whip where it is an ombre yarn. I have an ombre yarn whip and I have a Karen cake whip, but I really do like when you're kind of arranging the colors yourself and then you know when you're going to get to that next color change. And every row just really kind of got those endorphins. So it was really quick to finish the blanket itself, but then, oh boy, those ends to weave in were not fun. But this is a really big blanket. So I'll get it measured and get the pattern up on the website as soon as I can. There'll be two patterns for this one. One is for the blanket and then one for the border. Because really once you make the blanket, you could add any border. I almost did a ruffle blanket for this and I kind of started, this is just a modified moss stitch. So instead of chain one, so it does the regular moss stitch for the first row, regular moss stitch for the second row, and then for the third row, it's single crochet, chain two, single crochet instead of single crochet, chain one, single crochet. And I just did that all the way around, so it has kind of a rounded corner. But I was going to do a ruffle, and then I was loving the way that the moss stitch was working up, and I just said, you know what, let's just do it this way, and it came out great. So that's my rainbow blanket. That's my first finished object for the week. Next up is this pretty striped blanket I call Purple Fields. And this uses Bernat Softy Baby. This is a variegated yarn and then cream, dark purple, cream, and light purple. And so we do two sections of that and then end again with the variegated yarn. This one uses a very simple blanket stitch, so it's just a one row repeat throughout the blanket. But it really worked up nice with the texture on both sides. So I don't know if you can see that, but it really came out nice. Double-sided blanket. And on this one, again, I did the same kind of moss stitch border as you saw on the other one, except I did 2 rows of cream. So I did a half double crochet to start, 2 rows of cream, then 1 row of light purple, then 2 rows with regular moss stitch, and finished off with 1 row of that single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. So it kind of gives it a very slight ruffle edge. I don't know if it'll focus on that. But it came out really nice. I'm super happy with it. So I will get this photographed, get a pattern posted, and a video tutorial just as soon as I can. And once that happens, I'll put the link in the description below. So for works in progress, I've once again been working on this neon granny. Now I haven't added any new grannies to the blanket itself, but what I've been doing is working on the next set of colors and just kind of adding. So I just did green the other day. Oops, and there's a blue in there. See, this guy still needs to get done. But I've been working on adding the white. I'm gonna weave in these ends and then add in the black. So I'm gonna do all of the squares of this first, and then start joining them again to this blanket. That's my neon granny square project that I've picked back up. So I'm kind of excited to get this done. Finishing these two projects really did help to get me motivated to start finishing more of these projects, especially projects like this where, yes, it's a lot of pieces, but doing the granny squares themselves, very, very easy. So it's just kind of mindless sitting down, doing it, and then weaving in the ends. So that's my first work in progress. It's the neon granny squares. So this second work in progress is actually one I just started last night. And you can see it's going to be similar to that fancy shell stitch tutorial. This is another vintage pattern. And I'm using a Lion Brand Mandala bonus bundle. And I don't know the color for this offhand, but I do know it's still available. But what I'm loving about this stitch, so I'm not sure if it's going to focus, but it's a really super nice textured stitch. So it looks the same on both sides. It's a little bit tricky to get started. I had to put these stitch markers in to make sure that I'm going into the right spots, but overall the pattern is very simple and it's working up so, so lovely. So I can't wait to get that done. And I don't know what I'm going to call it. I think the book that I got this stitch from, it's like from the early 1900s, so it's in the public domain, and I think it was called like the Sutherland stitch. I'm not really sure, but once I get the blanket done, I'll do a stitch tutorial and all of that good stuff. But this is working up nicely. I think it is going to be a little bit of a yarn eater just because it's kind of stacks on each other, but really super cool vintage stitch, which is one of my newest whips. My next whip is one you may have seen a couple of times, and this is my Karen cake, Karen cinnamon cake ripple. And so this one's getting bigger and bigger. We're getting closer to being done here. And it's working up nicely. This is worked using alternating rows of the Karen, the cinnamon swirl cake. Where is it? There it is. This is the color Bay. And then it also has just a regular blue and spring green from Red Heart Super Saver. So working up really nice. I'd say we're 2/3 of the way done. I'm carrying the yarn up the side. So I will need to add a border, which we'll figure out at the end. Probably is going to be something super simple. But yeah, this one's coming along nicely and I work on it once or twice a week. And I'm really excited to get this one done so that I can get it, the pattern written for you guys in a tutorial, but also get it donated. So what's neat about this blanket is, so this is the same wave pattern as this blanket here. The only difference is this uses 7 double crochets on the sides. So going up and down to form the peaks and valleys is 7 double crochets, and that one used 5. So all that does is it kind of stretches out the wave a little bit more, whereas this one's a little bit of a narrower wave. So it was really fun to kind of play with the stitch multiples to be able to figure out, okay, what's a longer one and what's a shorter one. So when I publish this pattern, I'll actually probably just publish this one and then give you the stitch multiples and show you an example of how you would do the second one. We'll see, but they're really the same. The only difference is the multiple and then the number of stitches between the peaks and the valleys. So this is my blue-green ripple blanket. The next whip that I have to show you is this filet crochet blanket. So this is working up using Karen ombre yarn, and it's been really fun to work on. This is my own pattern, and I did take this blanket on vacation with me. So I went on a cruise recently and I took a couple crochet projects and I wanted to work on this one. The only thing is I didn't get the internet package for the cruise and I realized that I had translated my own pattern wrong. So when I made this design, I made it up in Excel and you kind of use the grid, a grid. And so the pattern is created by the spaces or holes. And I was on like row 55 of the pattern and it didn't have the right multiple to go across evenly. So I had to put it away for the cruise and I fixed it already now that I'm home and I can get started back on it. But I mean, that's one of the trials and tribulations, right, of designing your own pattern is Sometimes you don't get it quite right and you got to fix it. But this is my filet crochet blanket. I've been loving working with that Karen ombre yarn so much that I decided to go ahead and use this Karen Jumbo ombre. This is the colorway Blush and Blue. And I found yet another vintage stitch pattern that I want to utilize. And I think it's going to look really good in worsted weight, just so that you could see the stitch definition. And so I think I'm going to use this one and get started on that as a new whip this week. So hopefully I'll be able to show you some progress on that next week. Speaking of vacations, when you travel on vacation, do you take yarn with you? Do you take your crochet projects? Let me know in the comments. I actually did take several crochet projects with me on this cruise. It was a 3-day cruise out of my home port in Long Beach, California. Super fun. We do Carnival cruise whenever we can. And we had a lot of fun on the trip, but I always do love to crochet. So I'll be sitting back, relaxing in a lounge chair, and I'll just have my whip bag with me and crochet. And the same thing in the evening when it's quiet, I'll just sit. We got a balcony cabin for this cruise, and I'll just sit and I'll crochet on the balcony or crochet by the window, and it really is relaxing. So I did get some footage of how I organize my yarn and crochet equipment in the cruise cabin. So you may think it's a little bit overboard, but remember, you can tell by the number of whips I have, crochet really is a passion for me. So here's how my cruise ship cabin looked for my crochet hobby. So this is what it looks like in a crocheter's cabin on a cruise ship. This is a balcony room on Carnival Radiance, and we have set up the yarn winder here, which has come in very handy. And then in this little storage area near the bed, we have these collapsible bins. They collapse all the way down in the luggage. So we have yarn in this one, yarn in that one. We have a yarn book. I brought a scale just because I have a project where I needed to, I wanted to keep track of how much grams of yarn was being used, but we don't normally bring that crochet bag to take out on deck. Yeah, so that's what we brought to crochet. I know it seems like a lot, but I do know that I overpacked. So I should have only brought 2 projects for this 3-day cruise, but I didn't want to be in a situation where I was without a project. So it was a good thing I did bring an extra project, because again, that filet crochet blanket didn't quite work out, but I still had more yarn than I could do with. The good news is we had a couple teenagers with us. They were able to borrow some yarn, work on some amigurumi, and so it wasn't all for naught. But next time on a 3-day, I'll kind of tone it down just a little bit. One thing I don't regret is bringing that yarn winder. Not only myself, but also the friends that I cruised with. We both used it. It super came in handy, and I'm 100% going to bring it again on my next cruise. That was my first time bringing it, and it was absolutely the right answer. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, keep calm and crochet on.